This is Jim Semivan, and you are listening to That UFO Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to That UFO Podcast. My name is Andy, and this is your February 2023 preview pod. A chance for me to share with you who maybe don't see the updates on social media or just like to hear in an audio format what you can expect on the podcast this month ahead, and it's also your chance to get involved as well. As always, I want to start by saying a quick thank you to those who signed up on the various platforms to support me and the podcast on Patreon, Apple, Spotify and YouTube. It means a great deal, and of course it gets you a host of benefits including early access to podcasts, which are also in full and ad-free. Also, thanks to everyone who's took time to engage, listen and share, and also leave reviews in January. Leaving a review on your podcast platform really does make a big difference, so make sure you follow, subscribe if you're on Spotify, you click the follow button, same on Apple and same on YouTube as well. Makes a big difference to all those pain in the backside algorithms that can make a huge difference to how the show is actually visible to other people out there as well. We had some great shows to kick off 2023 and managed to get Dan on for a few breakdowns as well. Always fun to discuss the latest news as it comes in. Anyway, on to the guests and shows coming this month. Available right now on the free feeds is part 1 of my interview with Steve Aspen. He is an author and experiencer. We discussed his book Out of Time, the intergenerational abduction program explored. Steve has done decades of work and research into his own abduction experiences, his family's, and also other abductees. Some well known, others not so well known around the world. Early feedback's been amazing, so thank you very much. Part 2 is due to drop onto feeds Friday the 3rd of February. It's already available as always in full on the paid for feed, so the options there if you want to pay up to the price of a coffee or as low as the price of a cheap coffee. You can subscribe, support the pod and listen to that as well. But if not, part 2 on the free feeds from February the 3rd, and that should be up on the YouTube channel on Friday night UK time as well. On to the new guests coming up this month, and got a great range of guests to listen to as well. This week I've got 2 interviews, so I need you to get your questions in for these quickly. Apologise, this is coming out and then I'm recording 2 straight off the bat. However, they will be released over the coming weeks. First up, I have Earl Anderson, MUFON State Director for Southern California. It's been a while since I had anyone involved with MUFON on. For those of you who don't know, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. It's an international organisation that investigates UFO reports from around the globe, not just the United States. So if you are in Canada, Japan, Germany, Brazil, Australia or any other country, you can submit your reports to them and investigators will get back to you. That's something that I've been asked quite a lot. A lot of people get in touch with me and say they have seen something. How do they report it? I mean, sending it to me is wonderful, but there's not a whole lot I can do with it necessarily for it to be followed up, catalogued, and there's other things coming out in the future that will definitely help with that. But MUFON is certainly still a place you can do that too. It's a good chance to speak to Earl from MUFON about the state of sightings right now locally and also worldwide. Also, how the UFO landscape has changed over the years, and that means the role of organisations like MUFON has changed. Get your questions over to ufouapam@gmail.com. The following day, I have retired pilot, podcast host of the Lehto Files and former guest Chris Lehto on to discuss his recent work on the UFO topic and also get his unique pilot's perspective on recent happenings. Chris has gotten involved in a pretty deep way with the UFO topic since his arrival on the scene, which has been very welcomed. Particularly, I'm interested in speaking to Chris with his thoughts on some of the sightings we're seeing that are being reported by commercial and private pilots. Always an interesting listen. Get your cues over for Chris Lehto. Get them in ASAP. Probably be a busy one. Ideally, before this Friday at 9 a.m. would be fantastic. Next up, Bryce Zabel joins me, co-host of one of the most informative shows out there, Need to Know, with the inimitable Ross Coulthart. I wrote the word inimitable, and it's quite a hard word to say, so I'm chuffed I've said it twice. I've wanted to have Bryce on for quite a while now, well over a year and a half I've been chasing up Bryce. He's got a wonderful history and background with the UFO subject in the entertainment industry, but we'll also be looking particularly at the history behind US presidents and UFOs. Really intriguing path of conversation there, and I can't wait to hear what Bryce has to say. We're going to look at what presidents have done most to protect the UFO topic, the ones that have talked about it most publicly, but also what are some of the more incredible claims made about US presidents when it comes to UFOs. Fascinating stuff, so get your questions in nice and early for Bryce as well. It does always help, folks, if in the subject of the email you pop in the name of the guest. That would be great. Towards the end of the month, I'm going to release an interview with none other than author and experiencer Terry Lovelace. He is someone that many of you will have heard of. He was recently on with James Iandoli over at Engaging the Phenomenon. Myself and Terry have been going back and forward now for a while, trying to arrange a date. Life gets in the way, but I'm delighted to finally say I'm going to be speaking to Terry, not only about his famous experience, which he wrote about in his book Incident at Devil's Den, but also how the UFO topic has stayed in and shaped his life thereafter as well. This is already, I know, going to be a very popular guest and a busy one, potentially time limited for me, so anything for Terry, please send it over as soon as possible, folks. Also coming up this month, there'll be a bonus show with Paul Sinclair. You will remember Paul was my first guest in January. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to it. Really went down a storm, very popular, and he's coming back to discuss in more detail the Hunmanby incident. He touched on that on the original show. It's described by Paul as another UK Rendlesham. It sounded fascinating just in the short version he talked about with me on the pod, and as soon as we finished recording that day, the first thing I said to him was, I would love to get you back on to speak about that in more detail. So he's going to come back on and do that. So any thoughts or questions for Paul, send them back over. That's going to be getting recorded hopefully in the next week or so as well. On top of all of that, in the coming days or week or so, Dan will join me to talk through the David Paulides Missing 411, the UFO Connection movie, documentary that was released late last year. If you've seen it or haven't seen it, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, as it's the first time David's work directly has shone the spotlight on the UFO phenomenon potentially being a cause for missing persons cases, one that I'm really looking forward to discussing, because I hadn't watched David's work prior to this, so went back and watched The Hunted and his other Missing 411 piece as well, and I know a lot of you have read the books or watched those documentaries as well, so give me a shout with your thoughts. On top of all of that, folks, the usual breakdowns are going to be available, looking at news and talking points. Those will all be dropping too. Looking for a few more callers, new and old, for the listener call-in this month. If you're interested, drop me over a DM or email. We can book in a slot for a 5, 10, 15-minute call, and the floor is open for you to discuss what you want to talk about. I'm seeing some hints online, as I'm sure that many of you are. February and or March can be interesting months ahead. But let's be fair, we hear that quite often in the UFO game. It's nothing new, so let's wait and see. I know a few people had been in touch asking me, had I heard anything? Honestly, not particularly at the moment. That doesn't mean things aren't going to be happening. I'm just not too sure what some folks are getting at. But I've seen people like Tom DeLong with the eyebrow-raising comments being made online, so let's wait and see. Make sure you check out the Steve Aspen interview, folks. That is available for you to go and listen to now. As always, I'd love to hear from you, particularly if you've been listening and never gotten in touch with me, just to say how you started listening to the show. And I like to reply and say thank you just for listening as well. Have a great week, have a great weekend, folks, and look forward to speaking to you very, very soon. That is all for this week's show. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. You can like, retweet and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated. The shows are being uploaded onto YouTube as we speak more and more. You can sign up at patreon.com/That UFO podcast to access the shows ad-free as well. Please get in touch on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, That UFO podcast. Of course, on Twitter, it's at UFO UAPAM. And again, folks, as always, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little Baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little grass. Meditative gamma state full on meta. Can't imagine how it could have been any better. I got to the top of the stairs and there he was. Like, you awake? I was about to abduct you, cuz. I jumped back and nearly kissed myself, and I climbed out the window after the elf, and I woke up in my bed and there was something on my head and everything was weird and everything was red. And I called out to my boys. They thought this was noise. They thought it was a dream. They thought it was my toys. They thought it was my problems, and they think I should seek therapy, and I don't know what to do because it doesn't really scare me. If you really want to know who I think I be, I think it's you and me and us and we and him and her and that and she and that thing over there and what's that, Jay? But if we're being serious, open your mind, consider your heart, consider time, consider your space, consider your lies, consider your life, consider your eyes. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer.
What's that in the class with you that sonic boom? Got sleep paralysis and got me in my room.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer.